The very top, balancing on a pinhead, are the loud, the shallow, the ruthless, those who rise, not because they understand, but because they perform. But first you have to wake up, say it, wake up to the illusion of meritocracy. Wake up to the machinery that rewards noise over knowledge. The world rewards the loudest fools, not the wisest minds. Until we understand this, until we recognize our own hunger for easy answers, this cycle won't break. We'll keep choosing noise over nuance, and the kingdom of mediocrity will only grow stronger. Rawest form doesn't reward honesty, it rewards control. The voice that demands attention isn't the one explaining the messy truth, it's the one that simplifies, that screams certainty. Think of the scientist carefully outlining the risks of climate change, with charts and caveats, versus the politician boldly declaring, it's all a hoax. One is truthful but complicated, the other is loud and easy to grasp. And guess which message spreads faster? Simplicity sells. Or consider the cautious doctor who says this treatment may help, but genetics and lifestyle matter, compared to the charismatic healer claiming, drink this potion, and you're cured. We gravitate toward the healer, not because their cure works, but because they erase our fear in an instant. Fear is the fuel behind the rise of the fool. When life becomes tangled and confusing, we grab onto whatever seems sure. When reality feels overwhelming, we reach for comforting lies. When complexity drowns us, we beg for someone to say, don't worry, just follow me. And time after time, we obey. Not because we fully believe, but because we want to believe. We stop questioning, we silence our doubts, we punish those who remind us how little we understand. Wake up to the role you've unknowingly played in maintaining it, because here's the secret. You don't need their permission to stop kneeling. We don't want the wise. They tell us the truth is complicated. They say there are no easy answers. They challenge us to grow. No. We want the fool. He makes everything sound simple, so we crown him king. The smarter you are, the more you hesitate. Not because you're weak, but because you see the fallout. You understand that every decision sends ripples beyond your control. That's wisdom. But in the ruthless arena of power, it's a death sentence. Power doesn't reward integrity. It rewards audacity. The winners aren't those who ask, is this right? They're the ones who ask, can I get away with it? Some understood this cold truth better than anyone. They didn't shy away from it, they embraced it. A prince must learn how not to be good. This isn't advice, it's survival. Because in a world where cheating, lying, and manipulation are the norm, the honest player is a sitting duck. They're predictable. They're shackled by rules and conscience. In a system where winning means crushing all opposition, hesitation kills. Look back at history. Cicero was brilliant, principled, loyal to the Republic, yet he played by the rules, and Caesar, the rule-breaker, took the empire. Candidates who speak truth, embrace complexity, and act with humility often lose. Their opponents lie, oversimplify, and attack, and the crowd cheers louder. You don't need a crown to speak like a king. You don't need a title to act like a leader. In the game of power, morality isn't protection, it's a leash. The smarter you are, the heavier the moral burden. You want to do the right thing. You weigh every move carefully. You hold yourself back when others lash out recklessly. But that restraint, it comes at a cost. Because your rivals, often less clever, definitely less ethical, have no such chains. They cross boundaries without remorse. They break promises without hesitation. They manipulate and dominate with ruthless efficiency. And paradoxically, that makes them stronger. Because raw power isn't about truth or fairness. It's about control. And in a world ruled by control, the fool doesn't just rise, he dominates. He's loud, unbothered by complexity, immune to conscience. And the crowd, they don't follow the wise, they follow the certain, the loud, the bold, because certainty feels safe, even if it's wrong. And until we face this, until we admit we hunger for simplicity more than truth, the game won't change. The fool will keep wearing the crown. And wisdom, it will stay in the shadows. Power doesn't care about morals. It respects courage. It fears unpredictability. It rewards the one who breaks the rules and still wins. That's the harsh truth. The wise doubt themselves. The fool acts like they've got all the answers. And in a room full of noise, the quiet voice is the one nobody hears. So what happens? The intelligent retreat into the shadows, waiting for a fair fight that never shows up, while the ruthless rise, fearless and unburdened, untouchable. Power, is not given. It is taken by those who see clearly and refuse to dim their vision. You are dangerous when you think. That's the moral disadvantage. It's not that intelligence loses because it's weak. It loses because it refuses to become what it despises. And in a world that crowns the bold, not the good, that refusal can cost everything. Incompetence doesn't always shout. Sometimes it wears a tie, sometimes it offers a handshake, sometimes it hides quietly behind a desk, collecting a paycheck for doing nothing. Because when a fool climbs to power, it's not luck that keeps them there. It's the system reshaping itself around them, until failure becomes invisible and accountability is just a rumor. That's the decay, and it spreads fast. In places where results are fuzzy, feedback is slow, or truth is twisted, nobody really knows who's pulling their weight. That's where fools flourish. Look at politics. When disaster strikes, who takes the fall? The previous leader, the media, the weather, never the one in charge. Look at corporations. Middle managers who create nothing, fix nothing, lead nothing, yet still climb the ladder. Why? Because they master the art of looking busy. They speak the buzzwords, they nod when the boss talks, they smile when the reports lie, and if something crashes, there's always a scapegoat, a rebrand, or a carefully worded statement. Truth gets buried, failure gets dressed up, incompetence becomes official policy. Here's how it plays out.
Delay replaces decision.
Spin replaces strategy. Tribalism replaces truth. In this world, facts don't matter unless your team says so. Loyalty trumps logic. Appearance beats results. You are feared when you speak with purpose. You are unstoppable when you stop playing their game and start building your own. That's how tribes shield the fool. He doesn't need to be right. He just needs to signal loyalty. Speak the tribe's language. Create enemies. Distract with outrage. Divide with labels. When systems turn tribal, criticism becomes betrayal. Questions turn into disloyalty. And survival means submit, conform, or vanish. Add chaos, economic panic, media frenzy, endless crises, and the decay turns permanent. Nobody has time to think. Nobody has the strength to fight back. So we settle into dysfunction and call it normal. That's the last stage of decay, when it stops shocking us. When we stop hoping for better. When we stop asking questions, because we already know the answers will be lies. In this rot, the wise man becomes dangerous, not because he's a rebel, but because he remembers what truth feels like. He remembers what integrity means. He remembers that the world can be better, and in a world that wants silence, that makes memory a threat. Because power fears the man who remembers. The fool builds his kingdom on forgetfulness, on distraction, on fear. But the wise man carries the light of memory. And sometimes, that light is enough to start a fire. What does true competence even look like? The system can't allow it. So it silences the sharp minds, sidelines them with meaningless tasks, or buries them in bureaucracy until they either conform or quit. So build, speak, rise, but do it with clarity, not anger, not ego, just truth. Truth terrifies them, because truth cuts through the theater. Because once incompetence takes hold, it fights tooth and nail to destroy whatever actually works. This isn't a glitch, it's a feature, a calculated design. There's a moment, quiet, chilling, and unexpected, when the intelligent person wakes up to the truth. They've been playing by rules meant to break them. They weren't foolish. They weren't lazy. They just believed the biggest lie of all. That skill would be rewarded. That insight would be valued. That honesty would triumph in the end. But now they see clearly. All the meetings, promotions, politics, just a performance, a cage, and they've been bowing to it for years. Most bury this realization deep. They feel it gnawing at their minds. But it's easier to suppress than to resist. Easier to shrink than to stand tall. Easier to kneel and survive than to rise and be targeted. So they adjust. Become just competent enough to be kept, just quiet enough to never threaten the status quo. And the system loves that. But then there are the rare few, the ones who refuse. They stop pretending, stop nodding mindlessly, stop playing the rigged game. They walk away from titles, empty praise, hollow respect from hollow people. Not because they've given up, but because they've woken up. They realize they were never meant to fit in. They were made to see through the illusions, to break the cycles, not serve them, to ask questions no one else dares ask, to think dangerously, to live as a threat to systems built on lies. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't need permission. The throne isn't as stable as it looks. It trembles when you stand tall. And once they see it, there's no going back. This is your moment, not tomorrow, not someday. Now, to recognize what you've been kneeling to ask why you silenced your own voice, to admit your intelligence was never the problem, your obedience was. You don't need permission to doubt. You don't need approval to walk away. You don't have to keep sacrificing yourself on the altar of false kings. You are not here to obey. You're here to see clearly, to understand deeply, and when it's time to burn the script you were handed. Because nothing changes until the smart stop kneeling. And once you realize that you're no longer a servant, let's get this straight. Intelligence alone won't save you. You can be the smartest person in the room and still get outmaneuvered by someone with half your brain and none of your conscience. Power isn't handed to the thoughtful. It's seized by the bold, the ones willing to act, to push, to bend reality until everyone else believes their version. If you refuse to learn this lesson, you'll spend your life obeying those who should be learning from you. So what now? Do you keep playing their game, shrinking yourself into silence? Or do you stand up, question the rules, and rewrite the story? Because the world doesn't need more obedient thinkers. It needs rebels with wisdom, the ones who break patterns, break chains, break silence. You're not here to fit in. You're here to change the game, and that starts the moment you stop kneeling. What's the solution? It's not about bowing down, but it's also not about sneering from the sidelines. Cynicism won't rescue you. Mocking the system from a distance only feeds its fire. While you're busy complaining, someone else is climbing. It crumbles when enough of us stop kneeling. So, ask yourself, where are you in this pyramid? Are you holding it up, or are you ready to flip it? If this message stirred something in you, if you're tired of obeying, tired of watching the foolish rule while the brilliant bow, then don't just think about it. You have to master the game, not just critique it. Learn the rules inside out, so you know exactly when to play by them and when to shatter them. Forget waiting for fairness. That's a luxury the system rarely offers. Start crafting strategy instead, because the real battle isn't simply intelligence versus ignorance. It's awareness versus illusion. It's between those who understand how power really works and those who pretend they don't. If you want a world where wisdom leads, you must stop worshipping crowns. Stop confusing noise for strength. Stop valuing certainty over truth. Stop kneeling to fools, sitting on thrones they never earned. Your intelligence isn't a curse, but it becomes one when it's passive, hiding in the shadows, waiting for permission to act. So don't just be smart. Be sharp, be strategic, be dangerous, because the world doesn't need more thinkers who whisper in the dark. It needs warriors of wisdom who stride into power with eyes wide open, hands steady, and souls unbroken. That's what real empowerment looks like. Not becoming the thing you despise, but becoming immune to it. Act, because change doesn't come from waiting. It comes from those who decide, in a quiet moment, to never kneel again. And if that's you, welcome. You just took your first step out of the illusion. Now rise. Stood in the shadows, consumed by ideas, too vast for his time. The system doesn't fail. It works exactly as designed. It filters out the nuanced. It silences the uncertain. It promotes the ones who trade complexity for charisma, wisdom for obedience, depth for speed. Edison? He was the showman, the salesman who dazzled crowds with bold claims and relentless confidence. Edison understood the stage. Tesla understood the science. Guess who the world remembers as the winner? This pattern repeats endlessly, whether in boardrooms, governments, or social circles. The loudest voice takes the spotlight. The quick, decisive answer beats the thoughtful pause. The confident bluff outshines the cautious analysis. Depth becomes a liability, complexity a weakness. Why? Because society craves simplicity. It craves heroes with answers. It fears doubt. It hates hesitation. And in this hunger, power flows toward those who promise certainty, no matter how hollow it is. But here's the harsh truth. Certainty is not wisdom. Boldness is not brilliance. Performance is not power. True power is far subtler. It hides behind patience, reflection, and resilience. It lives in those who dare to question, who who resist the urge to simplify life's messiness for the sake of applause. Those who accept that not everything can be solved in sound bites or slogans. Yet, these qualities, nuance, depth, empathy, are exactly what the system pushes aside. The thinker becomes invisible, the empath becomes expendable, the doubter becomes disqualified. And that's the system's greatest trick, convincing you that to succeed, you must silence the parts of yourself that matter most. To rise, you must betray your true nature. To win, you must play a role that isn't you. But what if you refused? What if you decided that depth is your strength, not your weakness? That complexity is not confusion, but clarity waiting to be understood. That hesitation is not incompetence, but the mark of wisdom, weighing every choice. Imagine that shift. Imagine a world where the thinker is honored, where empathy guides decisions, where truth, no matter how complicated, is the currency of power. And here's the twisted part. Most people don't even notice. They clap, they cheer, they vote for the smile, not the substance. It sounds like a dream, but every revolution begins with a single refusal to obey the rules of the old game. You don't have to be the loudest in the room. You don't have to shout the loudest or fake the boldest. You just have to be real, because the loudest noise eventually fades. The shallow victories crumble. But the quiet, persistent voice, the one rooted in truth, echoes across time. So next time you feel pressured to simplify, to perform, to fit into the mold, remember this: the system rewards performance, yes, but it cannot sustain itself without the thinkers who refuse to kneel. Power built on illusion always trembles beneath the weight of truth. And you are the truth bearer. Stand firm, speak wisely, lead differently, because the world doesn't need more fools on thrones. It needs more geniuses who dare to rise on their own terms. Declares, "I've got this all figured out." This paradox isn't just frustrating, it's fundamental. Confidence masquerades as competence, while true competence often hides behind caution. The system rewards those who project certainty, no matter how shallow it is. Because in chaos, people crave a hero who appears unshakable, not a thinker who admits doubt. Look at history, business, politics. Who wins? The ones who act decisively, even if blindly. The ones who speak in absolutes, even if falsely. The ones who prioritize spectacle over substance. Tesla's quiet vision couldn't compete with Edison's roaring empire. They follow the confident fool over the quiet genius. Why? Because complexity demands patience. Truth requires discomfort. But lies are fast, easy, and comforting. Cicero's ethical stands were powerless against Caesar's relentless ambition. And today, the pattern repeats endlessly. Geniuses lose because they refuse to play the game. As it is, they insist on playing it as it should be. They hesitate, question, analyze. They expect others to value depth, integrity, and reason. But the game is rigged for noise, not nuance. For charisma, not complexity. For boldness, not balance. This isn't just a story of old men in history. It's your reality too, whether in the office, in social circles, or online. The loudest, simplest message wins the day. The nuanced thinker is drowned out or dismissed. But here's the catch. If you want to survive and even thrive in this world, you must first see the game for what it really is. That means understanding that power doesn't respect honesty or ethics. It respects influence, it respects optics, it respects those who master the art of persuasion no matter the truth beneath. And it means learning to wield your intelligence strategically, not by abandoning your values, but by adapting your approach. This doesn't mean becoming a cynic or a manipulator. It means mastering both the chessboard and the show, knowing when to speak, when to act, and when to wait. Understanding that silence can be louder than words, and that sometimes the most powerful move is the one nobody expects. The genius who learns this doesn't kneel anymore. He doesn't shrink away or stay silent. He uses his depth as a weapon, carefully revealing truths that others miss. He plays the game without losing himself, because true power isn't about being the loudest or the boldest. It's about being the most effective. And in a world addicted to comfort, the liar wins every time. So what happens to the thinker? He retreats. And that requires blending wisdom with strategy, insight with influence. So, if you're someone who thinks too much, who cares too deeply, who hesitates because you want to get it right, Know this, you are not broken. You are just playing a different game, and to win, you need to change how you play. Stop waiting for the world to value your depth. Instead, learn to present it in a way that captures attention. Speak with clarity, but keep your complexity alive beneath the surface. Stand firm in your truth, but recognize that truth alone isn't enough, because the fool isn't winning, despite his ignorance. He's winning because he embodies the qualities power demands: confidence, decisiveness, and simplicity. Your task? Be the genius who masters these qualities without losing the wisdom that sets you apart. It's not easy, it's not fair, but it's necessary. History won't remember the quiet thinker who stayed in the shadows. It will remember those who changed the game. Will you be one of them? The choice is yours. Rise wisely. Rise strategically. Rise unapologetically, because the future belongs to those who don't just think differently, they lead differently, by smiles and nods. This is not chaos, this is design. Look around, from boardrooms to parliaments, from social media platforms to corporate ladders. The same pattern repeats. The loudest, most unwavering voice takes the lead, regardless of the truth beneath, because people crave certainty like a drug. She shrinks. They learn the painful lesson. To survive, they must conform. But that conformity is a slow death, not of the body, but of the mind. They want answers, not questions. They want heroes, not complexity. The fool isn't just lucky, he's engineered by the system to succeed. His confidence isn't naive, it's hardwired, often fueled by a disregard for consequences and a lack of self-awareness. Narcissists and sociopaths don't just survive in these arenas, they thrive. Their emotional makeup lets them dominate conversations, manipulate perceptions, and bulldoze through doubt with ease. Think of Elizabeth Holmes. She sold dreams wrapped in pseudoscience, her unwavering voice convincing investors to pour billions into illusions. Or Adam Neumann, whose charm and charisma masked financial chaos, yet attracted massive funding and hype. And the populists who rise worldwide, thriving on polarized rhetoric and simplistic promises, drowning out every nuanced, reflective voice. This isn't failure, it's function. The system is built to reward the loudest, not the wisest. It prizes spectacle over substance, and favors those who speak in absolutes, rather than those who grapple with uncertainty. The fool ascends because he plays the only game that matters, projecting certainty, and in a culture paralyzed by fear and doubt, that certainty is irresistible. But power does not tolerate challenge. Once the fool occupies the throne, he fortifies his rule by silencing dissent. Wisdom becomes dangerous. Insight is a threat. The truth is a liability. Machiavelli captured it perfectly. The first test of a ruler's intelligence is the company he keeps. Incompetent leaders surround themselves with obedient yes men, not to innovate, but to control. They don't want sparks that ignite change. They want dull embers that never burn too bright. Who is more dangerous to the fool, the compliant sycophant, or the relentless questioner? The answer is clear. And once your mind dies, what's left to build, to change, to lead? Every day you stay silent in the face of stupidity, you give it power. So, the system expels the thinkers. It rewards the compliant, and what remains is a fortress of ignorance. Silence becomes the safest response. Those who ask why are branded troublemakers. Those who say this isn't working are called disloyal. Those who shine too brightly, who see too clearly, are pushed out quietly, efficiently, irreversibly. In their place, echo chambers filled with nodding heads. This is the architecture of failure, masquerading as success. It's why the smartest minds stay quiet or leave. It's why mediocrity rises unchecked, and it's why we continue to mistake noise for knowledge. This isn't just a story about power, it's a warning. The world rewards the confident fool, not because he's right, but because we crave simple answers to complex problems. But when we trade depth for certainty, insight for spectacle, truth for performance, we set ourselves up for disaster. The only way to change the game is to recognize its rules. To understand that true leadership isn't about being the loudest, it's about balancing strength with humility, clarity with complexity. It's about valuing questions as much as answers. And it's about refusing to settle for the hollow promises of the fool's certainty. Because real power doesn't come from confidence alone. It comes from wisdom, courage, and the willingness to face uncomfortable truths. Until we demand that, the fool will keep rising. And we'll keep watching, as the throne fills with echoes instead of ideas. Doesn't shout, he whispers nuance, and in a world screaming for answers, whispers get drowned out. Every time you nod to avoid conflict, you let the throne stay occupied by the unworthy. You were not born to obey. This cycle isn't random, it's engineered, deliberate. From the top down, incompetence breeds compliance. A clueless CEO hires a manager just a little less clueless. That manager picks an assistant even less capable, not because they're all inept, but because they've learned the unspoken rule: never outshine the boss. The result? A cascade of mediocrity. It's not about skill or talent, it's about submission. Every layer in this structure is designed to protect fragile egos higher up. In politics, loyalty trumps leadership. In corporations, innovation is crushed if it threatens old systems. In media, dissent is silenced to avoid backlash. Even in schools and families, the sharpest minds learn to keep quiet because speaking up stirs discomfort. This is how stupidity spreads, like a virus. It doesn't just survive, it replicates. It infects cultures, normalizes incompetence, and rewards conformity. Eventually, intelligence becomes the enemy of the system. The few who dare to think deeply are exhausted, isolated, mocked for caring in a world that acts like it doesn't see. But this isn't dysfunction, it's defense. Because once a fool grabs power, his greatest fear is someone truly capable. So he erects walls not with bricks, but with silence, mediocrity, and just smart enough followers who obey, but never challenge. And over time, the kingdom forgets what real competence even looks like. All that remains is the illusion of power. You were not built to serve the shallow. You were meant to question, to challenge, to create systems better than this one. Loud, hollow, untouchable. That's how ignorance protects itself, not by being right, but by making sure no one else is. The fool doesn't rise alone. He's lifted by us. We don't just tolerate stupidity, we celebrate it. We call it decisive, relatable, strong. And when it inevitably fails, we cheer for the next fool to take its place. Why? Because we're not as rational as we like to believe. The human mind doesn't hunger for truth, it craves certainty. In an unpredictable world, certainty is addictive, more so than any drug. Experts say it depends. There are variables. Look at the data. Manipulators say, I have the answer. Follow me. Which voice sounds better? That's the catch. We aren't always being fooled. Sometimes we choose to be fooled because the truth is too uncomfortable. We want clarity, even if it's fake. We want confidence, even if it's hollow. We want comfort, even if it costs us reality. It's a psychological shortcut, wired deep in our biology. When scared, confused, or overwhelmed, our brains crave an end to uncertainty. This is cognitive closure, the desperate need to resolve ambiguity, no matter the price. Intelligence doesn't decide who leads. Emotional safety does, so we follow the loud, the confident, the absolute, because their certainty feels like shelter. Meanwhile, the thoughtful one hesitates, weighs options, speaks in shades of gray and fades into the background.